Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name is Wee Lai. I'm a senior engineer at Weborion. Today I'm going to talk about 4 useful features of Weborion. So the reason I'm talking about these features is I feel that they are really important for web security. So today I'm going to share with you why you should use them and how they can help you secure your website. So to kick off, I would like to show you this basic architecture diagram. You can see this diagram is actually very basic. So what you can see here is actually a user trying to access a web page. But if you can see this picture, as actually there's quite a lot of steps involved for just navigating to the website. So first, you have to resolve the domain name with the DNS server to get the IP address of the web server. And next, the browser needs to verify the SSL certificate, whether it's valid or not, against its list of trusted CAs, and then also negotiate the SSL cipher suite and the key exchange. Next, the browser also needs to retrieve the HTML and also various page resources, such as the images, the CSS, the JavaScript, and finally, run the JavaScript and render the page. So if there is any other resources from other external web servers, the browser will also retrieve them, do a DNS lookup, and then the SSL negotiation also. So what happens next after this? There's also JavaScript can also try to retrieve more resources via AJAX call XML HTTP request. So what people tend to see here is this part of the architecture, but there is actually the extended web architecture, basically, such as the domain registrar, the CA or the certificate authority, and the DNS servers. So there is actually a lot of implicit trust on all these parties. And next, I'm going to introduce the Weborion engines and then how they fit into this monitoring, how they fit the monitoring fit into the web architecture. So the Weborion monitor actually uses 3 main engines. I think you probably heard enough of this engine by now. And if you are familiar, you're using our SaaS service, you have probably heard of these 3 engines as well. The first one is the content and the integrity analytics. So what happens here is these 2 engines, the content integrity analytics, they monitor the HTML file and then the resources as images, the scripts, JavaScript, CSS. And lastly, we also have the image analytics, which renders the web page, and then we monitor different regions of it. So these 3 engines actually work together. It's pretty well for detection of any web hackings. So today we also introduced 2 new engines. If you missed the talk earlier by Kaya, we also are introducing this tool called the JavaScript malware detection engine and the dynamic behavior engine. So the JavaScript malware detection engines detect known malicious script via signatures. So if you have, for example, someone put a crypto miner or miscut JavaScript on your website, so this is what happens is the engine will detect them and then will send you alert. And then the next engine is more special. It's called the dynamic behavior engine. What it does is it observes the underlying network traffic after the page has been successfully loaded. So this can happen if you have JavaScript that run after the page has been loaded. And what this does is it detects malicious traffic from these JavaScripts. So you can see today the JavaScript malware engine is already available, and the dynamic behavior engine will be launching in 2021. So if you see here, we are actually updating our monitoring capabilities to be in line with the more newer threats. So how do these 3 engines fit into the web architecture diagram that I introduced earlier? So if you see, this is the standard web architecture diagram. So the red circles actually represent the areas that Weborion monitors. So specifically, the content integrity and image analytics. So these 3 engines monitors these resources such as the HTML, CSS, JavaScript libraries. And the purple circle represents new monitoring engines that the upcoming engines will be covering. However, what I want to talk to you today is about the areas circled in green, which are the other features of Weborion that can monitor as well. So there are 4 features that I want to talk about today. So first one is DNS. Second one is SSL. Third one, who is, and the last one, it will be on the website performance. So I'm going to go over these features and then show you why these areas are important to monitor as well. So the first feature I want to talk about is the DNS records monitoring. So why do we want to monitor DNS records? So firstly, all domain names first have to be resolved to the IP address. So to resolve these domain names, you require a query to the DNS server. So for example, if an attacker has an control on a DNS server, you want to be able to detect it, as this attack will be potentially very disastrous. So why is it disastrous? Firstly, they can trick users to access a malicious version of the website without their knowledge via DNS redirection or hijacking. So once they have done that, it's very simple for them to capture sensitive data, such as passwords. This kind of attack is also known as pharming. So this is a very simple illustration on how the DNS redirect attacks work. So the attacker simply redirects the user to a malicious website intended to capture user-sensitive information. So the takeaway here is you can have the most secure web server, but if your DNS has been compromised, it doesn't really matter. So DNS are very juicy targets because the thing is, if you have control on DNS, you can bypass all your security, all your web server securities entirely, including your WAF and other monitoring tools. So the other problem is DNS are usually managed by external parties or outsourced. So there is no harm in that. That's actually quite common, but we must take a look at why DNS potentially can be manipulated or hacked in this case, because it's not under your control. And in this case, in August 28, 2013, so DNS servers of various media companies such as New York Times, Twitter, Huffington Post, all these are managed by an Australian internet company, which were hacked by Syrian hackers. So the thing is, the organizations themselves have not been breached, but the external vendor was hacked. So how does Weborion help in this case? But before that, we're going to talk about some caveats. So first, DNS is distributed by nature. So it's not possible to monitor all the DNS records and all DNS servers. And also there's actually many ways to do DNS hijacking. So what I showed you, talked about previously is actually having access to the DNS server. The other way is through DNS cache poisoning. The only true solution actually to solve all these problems is to use DNSSEC. DNSSEC, however, is still not widely adopted, and there's still a lot of domain registrars and DNS services that don't natively support them. So what we're going to do here is we are not going to solve the main issues in DNS, but we thought it would be a good point to start with monitoring the DNS records of your authoritative name server. So what does Weborion do? Weborion basically notifies you if your DNS records have been modified. So it monitors the following records, such as your A records, record A, the C name, NS, and the MX records. So moving on, I'm going to talk about monitoring SSL certificates. So SSL certificates actually serve two main purposes. The first one is to provide encryption between the web server and the browser client. So this is to prevent external parties from reading sensitive information, such as personal details or credit card information. And secondly, SSL certificates kind of allow the user to verify the authenticity of the page that they are at. However, this authenticity of the web page depends on the ownership of the DNS servers, such as DNS records. Because usually when the ownership of the domain is actually just tied together with the DNS servers. So this is often overlooked, but an unauthorized change in SSL certificates actually a very good indicator of compromise. So let's look at the case study, and that will show why is this so. So in 2017, hackers compromised a Brazilian bank for 5 hours. So according to Kaspersky, this is what happens. Firstly, the hackers compromised the DNS server, and then they used Let's Encrypt certificate authority, which issues free SSL certificates for their phony websites. And so with this control of DNS server, it's very easy for the hackers to obtain valid SSL certificates, because the main method for validation of the ownership domain is actually using the DNS. Next, what they do is they redirect the valid users to the fake website by changing DNS records. So if you look at this case, it's essentially the same as the first one, is DNS hijacking. So let's examine what the normal user of the bank, what will they see? So firstly, there will be a change in SSL certificate. So what the difference is, the issuer will change. So previously it could be, for example, it can be signed, the issue can be Komodo, and because the attackers use the new SSL certificate, it's changed to Let's Encrypt. However, to the user, this SSL certificate is perfectly valid. So if the hacker actually make the fake website to be rather convincing, rather close to the actual one, it's actually very hard for the bank users to tell. So one of the IOCs in this case would be the change in SSL certificate and change to DNS records. So this is why monitoring the SSL and DNS records are really important. So how can Weborion help? So firstly, Weborion notifies you when your SSL certificate has been changed or tampered. So secondly, although this feature is a little bit unrelated to security, but Weborion also notifies you when your SSL certificate is going to be expiring. So this will also prevent your users from seeing untrusted error on your web page when accessing your website. So for example, you can see in the picture on the right, it's actually very bad for reputation if your users see this kind of error message on your web page. So third feature I'm going to talk about is about who is monitoring. So why do you monitor the whois records? So the whois record actually, domain registry records actually contains records on the information on the domain list, such as domain registrar, your authoritative name server, and contact information, which is either the registrar or the domain owner. This is important because the domain ownership is actually tied and is vital to your online presence. And the authoritative, the DNS is actually tied to the ownership of the domain. So hypothetically, what can happen if a hacker manages to access your account, for example, with the domain registrar? So firstly, the hacker can transfer ownership of the domain to another registrar by impersonating the owner via phishing or social engineering. So hereby is causing you to lose ownership of this domain. So this, since the authoritative DNS are tied to the domain ownership, so attackers can also perform DNS hijacking as well and redirect traffic to another malicious website. So the change in registrar and whois record actually means that your domain has been transferred illegally. So I'm going to talk about another case study. So in this case study, we want to showcase why is it important to monitor your whois records. Your domain registrar themselves can be breached. So I think it's 2016, what happens is the GoDaddy customer support portal was vulnerable to a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So this portal is actually accessible to the customer service representatives only. But with this vulnerability, it can allow attackers to access the customer support portal illegally. So is this possible that vulnerabilities such as this exist that can lead to compromise of account in the domain registrar, even though it's not your fault. So there's also another case of compromise early this year, May 6, 2020. There was a breach in GoDaddy again, in which about 28,000 GoDaddy customers' accounts were breached. So what's shocking here is it took 6 months for the domain registrars to notice this. So Weborion can help you by monitoring your whois records. So in this case, if the domain is being transferred illegally, you'll be the first to know. And then it also complements the DNS and SSL monitoring features also. Okay, the last feature I'm going to talk about is actually website performance. This feature is not really related to security, but it's a good feature to have if you are subscribed to Weborion. So if you have subscribed to Weborion provides this feature together with its other monitoring capabilities. Weborion posts your web page at regular intervals already, and it saves your website's response time. So this is also a very good indicator of your server's performance, especially during the peak hours. So it also reviews how long your server has been down, and if so, it's a very good record for you to take a look. So the example here, you can see that this is our website, weborion.io. There is a small period of time where the web server is actually struggling. There's some connectivity issues. So without this graph, it's actually very hard to investigate when people complain that, hey, your website is down, and you want to investigate, you want to get exact time, and this performance metrics actually help you do this. So I'm going to talk about how to start monitoring with all these features. So it actually is very easy. Just log in, just log into the portal, the new portal, and then just select SSL, who is DNS monitoring, and just add configuration to start. It's very easy. Just enter the domain name, the port, and also the select the SSL, DNS, and who is tab, and then you'll be ready to go. So this is what the interface looks like on the new UI. So basically, you can set the contact group, who to contact whenever the compromise is detected. And then lastly, for the website performance, you don't need to configure anything. You just navigate to the list of web pages, and then you can straight away see the response performance graph. So in summary, these features are already available in Weborion right now. If you'd like to know more on how to enable these features on your account, please approach our sales team, namely Daniel, Bridget. So with that, I think it's time to show the last puzzle piece for users, for you to win the Apple AirPods Gen 2. So the prize puzzle will be on the count of 3, 1, 2, and 3. The puzzle keyword is cool, and the number is 2. So make sure you collect the 2 puzzle pieces and then send it to Jasmine to win the ultimate prize of the Apple AirPods Gen 2. So I'm just going to leave it here for a few seconds for people to start moving. So I hope you got it, and you send the email to Jasmine. We'll be announcing the winner later on. So first, I'm going to go to quiz time. So similar to the other sections, if you get this correct, you will win a $10 Grab food voucher. So the first question is, what kind of other kinds of monitoring that Weborion also do? Is it DNS, SSL, DNS, who is, or all of the above? Okay, so looking at the chat, I think the winner actually goes to Sudao Nakao. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the name correctly. So congratulations of winning another $10 again. Okay, that's the correct answer. And secondly, how does DNS hijacking affect the website? Does it allow attackers to redirect to their malicious site? Does it allow attackers to steal user credentials via farming, or all of the above? Okay, so the winner goes to Soepao Sulaiman. So congratulations. We'll be in touch with you for the $10 gift voucher. So thank you very much for joining our summit today. I hope you learned something about Weborion and learn something from this talk as well.